Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Now we have to do this every single time because I get in trouble otherwise. So thank you for coming and spending time with us today.
Thank you for having me here.
So yeah, James, I think it's probably best if you give a quick background of yourself to the crowd so that people know.
Okay, so my name is James Kwon. In Korean it's Il-Hwan Kwon. I run Qualcomm Ventures in Korea. I used to be a consultant in a consulting company called McKinsey & Company. So I spent about 3 years there, and I actually started my career as an entrepreneur. Well, entrepreneur is not a good word. I was just a young kid trying to build a company then.
That's what we are.
So it was like 2000 when I started my own company. And I was with the company for about a year, and I left. And spent some years with a couple of startups and mid-sized companies in Korea. Then I went to get my MBA, and after getting my MBA, I joined McKinsey & Company. Spent 3 years there, but my heart was still in the startup community. But I became too comfortable with the salaryman's life, so I was not brave enough to come out and start my own thing. Then I thought, well, venture capital is something that I can really enjoy and be part of the startup ecosystem too. So 2010, I joined Qualcomm Ventures. Since then, I am running Qualcomm Ventures in Korea and oversee Qualcomm's venture investment here.
Just in terms of just becoming, when did you exactly become a participant in the startup economy again? We won't hold you against being a part of McKinsey here.
It depends. I can say it was 2000 or I can say it was 2010, but I became a venture capitalist until 2010, so it's over 4 years, slightly over 4 years.
And as a part of Qualcomm, what are so a lot of us are either entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, or people who are interested in this space. So what do you primarily focus on? Like, what are the stages that you look at, or what are the types of companies that you look at typically these days, or what have you done before that's kind of leading up where you are now?
Okay, so Qualcomm Ventures, we explain ourselves as financially driven corporate venture capital. So we basically act as financial investors, but within the realm of business that is related to Qualcomm. So anything that is related to mobile ecosystem, we invest in. And we are also very much stage agnostic. So Qualcomm Ventures started in 2000 in the States. Traditionally, we invest in Series B or higher. But starting in 2011, if I remember correctly, we started something called a seed fund. So we allocate a certain amount to specifically for the seed stage companies. We have been more active in the Series A, so we are more of a stage agnostic. So we write a couple $100,000 checks to 5-6 million. Recently we wrote like up to $10 million check one round. So we are very much stage agnostic. As I said, we invest in any business technology that is in the mobile ecosystem. But if I specify some of the areas that we are more focused on, we have about 22 investment managers around the world in 7 different countries. And those 22 investment managers are broken down into 5 different committees. So one is a big consumer committee that focuses on mobile advanced services, software that focuses on enterprise and B2B software, core tech that's more hardware type of business and technology. We certainly focus on healthcare, mobile healthcare, and the other one is mobile infrastructure. Whatever infrastructure is required for LTE, 5G, that sort of stuff.
So out of those different 5, do you actually touch on all 5 different areas in Korea, or do you specifically focus on a few that is more tuned to your interests?
Well, I want to focus, I want to touch upon all five, but I was able to touch on only three so far. So I have a company in core tech space, which makes a digital amplifier chipset. I have a bunch of portfolio companies in consumer space, whether they be game company or social network company, job placement company, or investment, social trading platform. And I also have a software company that is focusing on mobile security. And these days I have a big, not big, but I have a running theme. So I am trying to look at companies that tries to remove information asymmetry, thereby removing some inefficiencies in the market. So those are the companies that I'm looking for at this point.
So in terms of your recent investments, can you just talk about your most recent investments and what kind of a process do they actually go through? So a lot of people here are interested in trying to see if there are opportunities to pursue with Qualcomm for investments. So what are the typical phases that they would have to go through, and how do they approach you in the first place?
Okay, so two most recent companies are, I don't know if you know these companies, but one is called Job Planet. It's like a Korea version of Glassdoor. And the other one is called Dunamu. They provide a service called Qualcomm Plus for Kakao, and that's a social trading platform. And these two companies are under the theme of removing the inefficiencies by removing information asymmetry. Because if you look at like social investment trading platform, what it does is that it actually provides you with a lot of information about stocks that you can invest in. Like normal people like myself may have a few $1,000s sitting around, but I don't know where to invest. But this platform helps you with that, and also job placement, the Job Planet. It helps employers to find the good talents, and it helps employees find the good companies or right kind of companies to work for, thereby removing the information asymmetry there. And usually the steps that is required with Qualcomm Ventures, we have a two-track. One is a seed investment. So seed investment, we allocate a certain amount for each country per year, and we write from a couple $100,000 check to $500,000 check. And that process is very simple. You meet, the company meets with me, and if I like the opportunity, that I bring that up to seed committee, and the company have a conference call with the seed committee just once, and after that, the decision is made. And the process takes somewhere between a week to a month. And the normal process, as I said, there are about 22 investment managers around the world, and those 22 are broken down into several committees. So the company have meeting with me first, and I take that opportunity to a certain committee that the company fits with. And I have a first investment committee meeting or call with the committee, and if the passes, then I get to, then the company has an opportunity to interact with my global team. And after that, there is an internal, second internal committee call that is with this same committee plus all the global heads. So head of Korea, head of China, head of India, head of Israel, US, Brazil. So after that stage, if the deal passes, second investment committee, I'm making this process very complicated.
I'm surprised for you guys.
After the deal passes the second investment committee, that's 99.97% done. What happens with the Qualcomm is that Qualcomm is a corporate. It's a ton of fun. So the decision has to be made upstairs. So I have to take this opportunity that, past the stage 2 or second investment committee to our CEO. CEO, CTO, CFO, and all the business head. So that's basically a 7 executive vice president of Qualcomm that come together, review the deal, and once they approve, 100% done, then the contract can be signed and the fund can be transferred.
Great. So
it sounds very complicated.
Yeah,
right?
it's sounded kind of complicated, but I think it's relatively simple. 2 tracks. Let's see if I got it right. All right. So 2 tracks. The first track is the easy track, which is an amount from $100,000 all the way up to $500,000, and then essentially you just need to impress him. And he says yes, then it gets invested. I think that's it, right? Okay. Track 2. Track 2 is a little bit more complicated because it seems like there's a lot of ICs. IC, investment committees, right? So IC1 is basically him talking with the other 20 investment managers around the world. And then
6 actually, 6.
6, okay, 6 investment managers across the world, and they say yay. And then it goes to the second investment committee, which then again goes 12.
12 investment.
Okay, investment managers in that case. And then it goes, and then if they say yay, then it goes to the third one. Basically, that goes to all the C levels of Qualcomm.
Yes, CTO, CFO.
And at that round, basically, if you pass the second one, you have a 99.97% of getting through the third one.
That's very precise because the number is based on our history.
Okay. So that means that you're going to get that rubber stamp. That's great.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, the process sounded very complicated and long, but we're actually evaluating manual play, and we just did stage 2 or the second investment committee call,
Right.
and that took just what, 3 weeks.
Yeah, just about.
So
I thought
the process can be pretty fast, and pretty smooth too.
Yeah, it is pretty fast, I tell you. And and that's how I knew all about this. But this is exactly what this is about, right? You start making connections, you make friends, and you start talking to them. But I've been speaking and talking to James a lot, and it's essentially, if you actually want to start kind of talking to James, this is the type of an opportunity that will enable him to do this. Now, the size of the check is probably bigger than 500,000 to, you said, what, $10 million?
So 5 or 6 million is probably our comfort zone, up to 5 or 6. But we have written check sizes like, above 10 mil.
So there you go. So if you're interested, please talk to him. Especially if you're under 500, you just need to impress him. And then in terms of the environment that you kind of see in Korea versus the U.S., what are the type of the things that you see in the Valley, in the startup ecosystem that's slightly different from what you see there in here? Like the kind of deals that you would typically see from the Valley, for instance, versus the type of deals that you get from here. Do you see any big difference in the type of deals or in the areas that Qualcomm invests in?
I work for Qualcomm Ventures, and we say we are a global team, but obviously I'm based out of Seoul, and actually Qualcomm headquarters is in San Diego. It's not even Silicon Valley, so I'm not really familiar with what is going on in Valley, right? But what I can say about Korean startup ecosystem, or what I can say, what I want to see more in Korean startup ecosystem is a success case. Because I believe, small or big, the success case is like spark or ignition that starts entire engine called ecosystem. So if you think about like when you're a child, right? Your parents probably made you read biography of Lincoln, 이순신, 세종대왕. Why? Because they want you to follow their footsteps or dream big. Be someone who's very important. So just like that, if there's a success case that people or young people who are trying to start the company follow the footsteps of one who made big or who made a small success too. So if there are those success cases, more and more of that, probably startup ecosystem will be even more flourish in Korea. And maybe that's one difference, right? In the States and Silicon Valley, there are a lot of success cases. Google, Apple, IBM, Intel, Peter Thiel, those type of things, and they make big and they reinvest or start their own company again. The whole cycle starts. And now I think those small or big success cases appear more in Korea. But I would like to see more of those in Korean startup ecosystem.
So do you see a difference in culture of what you see, like, or what you hear from your other investment managers outside of Korea versus in Korea?
Culture in the startup ecosystem,
Yeah.
or?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any much difference in startup, culture. Certainly, I think it's more active here in Korea. It's more dynamic here in Korea. So I think it's just it's very interesting time to be in Korean startup ecosystem now.
Okay. Yes, it is. It is, guys, right? Oh my God. You guys are so Yes, guys? Yes. All right. So in terms of your portfolio companies that you manage, so what are the kind of potential conflicts that you see coming with, and how do you manage these different conflicts, from an investor perspective? Right?
Conflicts. I don't know if conflicts is the right word, but sometimes I have different opinion about the business, how the business should run, or how the business should develop. So, founder of the company or the managing team and I, discuss a lot about the strategy, what is a milestone that the company has to hit next. We may have some differences there, but at the end of the day, entrepreneurs and the managers, management team of the company are the ones who are executing business, and I am just an advisor or just a talker. So even if there's a difference, I spend a lot of time trying to close that gap or close the difference, but once the decision is made, I try to support them in any way I can, because if there's a differences just keep going on between the investor and the company, then this is not going to go anywhere. So I don't know if this answers your question, but
no, I mean I just a lot of the times many entrepreneurs have this fear, or even just it may be fear, it may be kind of concern about, hey, how do we actually deal with investors when we do have conflicts or when we have problems? Like, what are the best ways to solve different types of issues with them? But then oftentimes we try to talk it out, but then it may not work out. Then what do we do, right? So I just wanted to kind of hear some of your advice, or what you have for the entrepreneurs in Korea, and as to what
can you specify about those conflicts?
Yeah, sure. So let's say let's just take the example of a company's strategy, right? And then the company strategy was to take this company and use the resources to build a particular feature on a product. And in the big scheme of things, you think that product feature is probably not the best kind of use of resources, let's say. And you had your reasons for it. And in those types of questions, is a very strategic decision that you have to make, also from a company standpoint, and because it's resource allocation, right? So then how do you actually talk about those issues when you have very different ideas about that?
Yeah, I mean, for that type of conflict, it's just a different view. And I guess one compromise or one solution I can think of is like, let's try not full-blown trial of new features. but take it step by step. So there'll be some ways that we can try this new feature without investing too much of the resources into it. So let's just try that first, and if that works out, then we'll just go ahead with that direction. If it doesn't work out, then we step back and we think about the strategy or that particular feature. So I mean, at the end of the day, we're all grown-ups and we're all professionals, and I believe we can talk it out. And if you become more creative in problem solving, then there could be a lot of ways to solve this type of conflict, especially if it's about the strategy or about the product features and that sort of stuff.
Okay, great. And then what kind of advice, last kind of advice that you would have for aspiring entrepreneurs that are looking now, starting to look for funding?
Okay. Looking for funding.
Right now, let's say they're out there looking for funding. What kind of advice would you give them?
Okay. Some people say money doesn't have face or characters, but I would say, I agree, but I would say people behind those money have faces and they have characters. So don't go for any investor who offers you better valuation or better terms, but go for investor that who have a better fit with you, with your company, with your business, because it sounds like very cliche, but getting an investment is like getting into marriage, right? So everyone uses the term, but it's true, because you may hate your partner, but you won't leave your partner unless you get divorced and pay a lot of money, right? So that's how investment works too. So if you're going to spend significant of your time with this investor, then choose the right one, not just go for higher valuation or higher terms. Better terms. So that would be my advice too.
And is there something that they should probably do before they approach VCs?
Have a good IR deck.
Have a good IR deck.
But I guess I am asked this question a lot. What is the right timing to raise a fund? And people ask me, I have only so much money in my bank account. Is this the right timing to raise a fund? That may be, because if you don't have any kind of capital, then your current company cannot go on. But I guess the right timing is whenever you're ready to take your company to next step. So if I take an analogy, right? You're building a spaceship and sending it out to space. And you probably need like $1 million to build a spaceship. But no one is going to give you like $1 million in just lump sum. So you have to first prove that you can build an engine that can take the spaceship out into the space. And after that's done, then you go for higher funding and maybe build a navigation system, because at the end of the day, as astronaut, they have to come back home. Then you go for another funding and build the body of the ship, so on. So building a company or building a business is just like that, and that is why investment is staged, like seed stage, Series A, Series B. So in each stage, you have to test a lot of things. And then you get results from the test. Then you decide what is the right next step and what is the right milestone that you have to achieve for the next step. So when you figure out what is going to be your next step and the milestone, that is the right timing when you raise a fund. Not just because you're running out of money or because your company is not growing fast enough. So that would be another.
Okay, that's great. All right, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to open up for questions. Crowd. And
question?
Yeah, hold on a second.
I don't even know. How involved are you in
Other people can't hear you.
How involved are you when you're investing in terms of creative side is concerned? Like, are you much part of the management as much as the people who are running the company? Do you direct that company to go to a certain kind of direction. How much of that is under your guidance and direction?
When you're making investment decision or after investment?
After you made a decision to invest in that company, how much of your input goes into the creative side?
It depends.
Do you see that as your right?
Do I see that as my right? No, I see that as my obligation.
Okay.
It's my obligation to my LP. It's my obligation to the entrepreneur who believed in me, I believe, who wants to work with me because of some of the asset that I have. So it's my obligation to offer whatever asset I have. So I don't think it's my right, but it's my obligation, and it's entrepreneur's right to whether accept it or disregard it. But whatever happens, I try to give my advice to the founder and tries to help the founder or the entrepreneur or the management team make a decision, whatever is best for the company.
Do you ever pull out of an investment when the direction has gone differently?
Hold on a second. Can you guys hear the question in the back?
No.
Okay. Can you use the mic?
I'll use the mic. Do you ever pull out of an investment because the direction of the company isn't to your liking?
No. I don't think Qualcomm Ventures ever has, but there could be cases. So like this, business is going south. There are multiple reasons why business goes south. Maybe management was bad. Maybe internal market was sinking. There could be a lot of reasons, and just because business is not going anywhere, pulling out investment, I don't think it's right. But if there was a governance breach or contract breach, commercial law breach, that could be something that we can pull out our investment. But if I speak more practically, it's very hard.
How long would a person who is running a company?
You get one.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
the last question.
I don't ask anymore. I'll someone else take it. You want to take that?
Yeah.
You can ask a question. Go ahead.
We're just curious about the contracts you have with different companies. How much do they differ across companies, in terms of liquidation rights, control, and so forth? And what kind of bargaining power does an entrepreneur have with you if you want to invest in their company?
These are pretty tough questions.
Wow.
So some funds have standard template, but at Qualcomm Ventures we don't have a standard template because we believe every company or deal are different because there are so much different stages they're in, or the management team, dynamic that I have with the management team, or trust or rapport that I have built with the team during the negotiation phase. Everything is different. So therefore, terms are quite different. Some contracts have put, some don't. Some have redemption rights, some don't. Some have, some other options, some don't. So they look quite different. And bargaining power, I don't know. I guess, let's put it this way. It's not like bargaining. We are negotiating, but we are trying to find a middle ground that both parties feels fair. Because if I invest in a company and the entrepreneur feels it's unfair, but because I need a capital, I'll just go with Qualcomm Ventures. But down the road, that will become a problem. So I want to prevent that. So it's just a process of trying to find a middle ground where everyone feels fair. May not be satisfied with, but feels fair.
All right. Next question. I think there was one on that side.
Hi, I'm not good at using English.
You could use Korean.
한국말 하세요.
아까 전에 한국이랑 실리콘밸리에서 스타트업 컬처가 좀 비슷하고 별로 차이가 없고 한국이 더 오히려 핫하다 뭐 이렇게 말씀하셨는데 제가 몇 번 만나본 투자자들, 한국의 투자자들이랑 특히 VC들이랑 얘기를 해보면은 보통 한국의 기업들은 투자할 때 좀 비즈니스 모델이나 어떻게 돈을 버는지 그런 모델이 제시돼 있지 않으면 투자를 잘 안 해주려고 하더라고요. 근데 실리콘밸리에서는 기술이나 아이디어 같은 것만 좀 좋으면 그냥 좀 많이 투자를 하는 걸로 알고 있거든요. 그런 차이점에 대해서 어떻게 생각하시나요?
So let me rephrase the question for those people here. He's asking, hey, you mentioned that the culture is very similar between Silicon Valley and Korea. But from his experience of talking to other investors in Korea, Korean investors are more, I guess, more focused on backing businesses that have a business model already, and in the U.S. It's more about getting ideas or technology for the long run. And what do you think? I think that was the question. Did I get that right? Yeah? Okay.
Sure. Should I answer in Korean or in English?
In Korean is fine. Yeah.
Okay. 제가 느낄 때는요, 그것도 맞는 말씀이신 거는 같아요. 그런 경향이 없지 않아 있어는 보이고요. 근데 제가 미국 팀하고 인터랙션을 하거나 뭐 이스라엘이 됐건 중국이 됐건 인터랙션을 할 때 보면 투자자의 입장에서는 어차피 투자를 하고 거기에 대한 수익을 보는 업이다 보니까 조금 더 안정적으로 비즈니스가 돌아가고 있고 매출을 내고 있고 이런 데를 선호할 수밖에 없어요. 그거는 미국이 됐건 한국이 됐건 다 똑같은 것 같아요. 근데 미국이 오히려 저기는 아이디어만 있고 기술만 있어도 투자를 한다라고 보이는 것 같다라는 생각을 좀 가지고 있고요. 근데 그냥 아무것도 없는데 아이디어만 가지고 투자를 한다 그렇지는 않아요. 투자를 받는 사람들의 면면을 보게 되면 이미 스타트업에서 성공을 한번 해봤었던 경험이 있다는 거지. 기술을 가지고 있는 사람이라고 한다면 이런 거겠죠. 정말 좋은 공대에서 엄청나게 좋은 논문들을 쓰고 그게 엄청나게 좋은 저널에 실리고 뭔가 PhD를 가지고 있고 그러니까 기술만 있다라기보다 이 사람이 진짜 그 기술을 만들어내고 시장에 끌어나갈 수 있는 어떤 크레덴셜이 있겠구나라고 할 때 투자가 들어가는 거지 그냥 기술이라는 게 있다 혹은 그냥 아이디어가 좋은 게 있다 그래서 투자를 하는 것 같지는 않아요. 근데 그렇게 보이는 이유는 뭐냐 하면 저는 그렇게 생각을 합니다. 이게 아까 말씀드린 것처럼 조그만 석세스 케이스들 이런 것들 좀 더 봤으면 좋겠다라고 하는 게 저희가 모르는 저희 뭐 피터 thiel에 대해서 얘기를 하고 앨런 머스크에 대해서 얘기를 하고 하지만 저희가 모르는 엔터프레너들이 너무 많아요. 성공을 한 사람들이. 근데 그런 사람들이 이제 제공하는 토양 위에서 다른 엔터프레너들이 기술이나 아이디어만을 가지고서도 어느 정도의 크레덴셜을 가지고 시장에 나오기 때문에 저희가 모르는 사람들이기 때문에 그냥 아이디어나 기술만 가지고 투자를 한다라고 생각을 할 수는 있겠으나 실질적으로 그거를 조금 더 깊이 들여다보면 그거 외에 투자를 받을 만한 다른 조건들이 또 있더라라고 하는 게 제 생각이에요. 그게 답변이 됐는지는 모르겠는데
그런 조건들을 보는 경향이 한국이랑 밸리가 똑같다는 말씀이신가요?
미국이 조금 더 자유로울 수는 있겠죠. 하지만 아주 차이가 나는 것 같지는 않습니다.
네, 감사합니다.
네.
Okay. Yeah, that was really long. The summary version is
I have a question over here related to the
Well,
answer.
hold on. I gotta retranslate that answer from him for some people here. Yes, it is. Oh, there it is. I agree with your point in some way. Companies in China, Europe, and Korea, investors would prefer companies with solid business models. Okay, so you can read it. That's what that says. Yes.
Someone can type that fast.
Yeah, that's him. Ethan, say hi. Yeah. Ethan, you're up.
Very good.
Yeah. All right, so now you can ask your question.
Thank you. I have a question related to your answer and his question. So people say that valuation is not a science but an art. I'm curious about how you value the company. So I'm wondering how you value the company called Mango Plate. What is your criteria?
Dude, what you got? Now there's no way of finding it out.
So how do you say it first, cash flow or the number of users you have in the company?
Well, I'll leave Mango Plate out of
Yes, please.
this because the way I calculate Mango Plate valuation is quite different from what I'm going to tell you now. But usually, this is how venture capital's mind works. I believe in this business or this opportunity. Then I picture if the company becomes very successful or everything goes as planned or expected, how big this company can be. Then I come up with some number then, by using some sort of market multiples or some comparables and whatnot. Then I track back. So this is a very early stage. Let's just assume there's a hypothetical company called A, right? And A, if everything goes well, I believe using all multiples and comparable cases, it may become $100 million company. But this is like a Series A. And then the company may need to raise 2 or 3 more rounds. Then my share or ownership of the company will get diluted, every time company raises a new fund. So therefore, if there's a 2-3 more rounds, then my shares will be diluted by 50-60%. Then I have some number in my mind what kind of shares then we can get. And since we're a Series A, there's no guarantee that the company will go as planned. Then I use some sort of discount number. So putting all those things together, I come up with a valuation. So just starting from the very end and checking back, and what is the ROI target that I'm going to shooting for? Based on that, I can come up with the valuation. Therefore, it's not science; it's more of an art because it depends largely on what is the end picture look like. And that is like, how strong I believe in it. And it depends on my conviction in the company. So it's more of an art than science.
Yes, he loves us.
Mango Plate is going
By
to
the way,
doubling
download
down
Mango
for
Plate if you haven't done so already. Now that I have an opportunity to say it, I'm watching you. We should use it. Okay? And then we'll go for Thomas after. Yep. Thomas is also a VC, just so you guys know.
You mentioned,
Some people are asking, I don't know who it was.
you mentioned that Qualcomm Ventures is stage agnostic, but I'm guessing the investment philosophy as an early stage investor will be quite different from late stage investor. So what are the key metrics or what are you looking for from the team as an early stage investor?
What I look for in the team?
Yeah, especially when it's not really predictable, like as a seed investor, there's some kind of things that you're looking for from the team. Like is it vision, their background, or business model? Or
Well, I mean, if it's a very early stage, like seed stage company, business model will change. The company will certainly pivot to something else. So it's more of a problem the team is trying to solve. And I think the problem is very, very important because how big the problem is dictates how big the market is going to be. So it starts from the problem the team is tackling. And within the team, I guess I look for creative problem-solving skills. Because running a company or building a company is like, I mean, June can tell you more about this, right? But it's like a constant challenge and constant problem solving, and you have to be very creative. or the solution, seemingly very, very expensive solution, you can always find a way to solve the problem with cheaper solution. Have several steps in turn. Try this, try error, go back, try again. That sort of stuff. So creative problem solving skill is probably one most important thing that I look for in a team in a very early stage.
Okay. So I think we have probably maybe one question after Thomas, and then probably that's about it. So we'll get to Jude. And that will be the last question.
안녕하세요. 반갑습니다.
네, 안녕하세요.
Hi, my name is Thomas. I'm from Mad Ventures. It's a small venture capital firm in Canada.
Good to meet you.
And we are actively investing in the Valley. There's about 20 portfolio companies that we have right now. And the valuation for the Valley firms are, we typically invest in the seed round, and the valuation that we face are about $5, $6, $7, and $8 million. And these are
seed or
seed, yeah.
Seed, okay.
Yeah. So I do sense a little bit of a bubble forming, and my question to you is, when's it gonna burst?
Well, now he's got the answer, right?
Well, I didn't bring my this what do you call it, this crystal ball. So I can't tell you when it's going to burst. I mean, I hear a lot of people saying it might be a bubble. I don't have any clue, quite frankly. Sometimes it feels like bubble, sometimes it's not. But what I can tell you is it's all math, right? It's all supply and demand. If there is more demand than supply, then valuation will go up. And if there's more supply than demand, then valuation will go down. So certainly, what this market is saying to me is that there are more demand. And certainly in Korea, there are a lot of liquidity at this point. Government is pouring a lot of money here, and the asset management firms or investment advisory firms, they started investing in non-public companies too. So a lot of money pouring into this startup community. So yeah, overnight, the fund size can double, but it's not the case for a number of companies, right? A number of good companies to invest. So valuation is going up, that's a natural course. But is it bubble level? To be frank, I have no view on that. I have no view on that. But please let me know if you think the bubble is going to burst, because
Yo! Not until the end of this month.
Thank you.
All right, G.
Okay.
Yeah.
Earlier, hello, can you hear me? Okay. Earlier, you were talking about the differences between here and the Valley.
I'm sorry I asked that question.
But one thing that I noticed here is the amount of government involvement in the startup ecosystem. I mean, they said that in this year alone that the government's going to support up to 1,000 venture companies. And we're kind of an experiment. The three of us are like the first foreigners receiving money from the Korean government for our startup. But,
congratulations.
Oh yeah, thank you. We hope we don't let everyone down. But do you, sometimes it feels though that this government involvement might be like a little too much, and it's kind of like, sometimes it feels that like with the first economic boom of Korea, that there's so much pressure to get things done so quickly that people start to cut corners, and then disaster happens. Like in our case, like sometimes the people that are overseeing our funds, it felt like they just learned what a startup was right before they started this program. Like they're going on their Jishikin and saying startup moyo, and figuring everything out. So do you think that Korea needs to kind of, in terms of the government pressure, needs to kind of slow down and let things happen more organically? Or like, what's your opinion about the amount of government involvement in the startup ecosystem?
That's a very sensitive question to ask someone from Qualcomm.
You don't get another question.
I guess involvement of Korean government has two sides, right? Both good and bad. I believe Korean government is doing good to start a community, that's for sure. Whether that's loosening out some of the regulations or directing some of the funds so that earlier stages or seed level stage companies get more funding than later stage companies will foster certain sectors of industry and certainly pouring a lot of capital in the market. So there are a lot of good things that Korean government is doing. But this is a marketplace, right? And we need invisible hands, not active hands trying to organize the market itself. I think it's in, right now we are in the transition period. So I believe or I hope that Korean government involvement will slow down and they work on more of a bigger picture or the higher level problems like regulations or some of the things that this private sector cannot solve. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it answered your question, but I think there are both good and bad sides. And certainly I want to see Korean government do more on this issues that private sector cannot solve.
Okay, so I think that basically concludes that is the last question we have now completely run out of time. So what I would like to do is I wanted to put our hands together for James for coming here and actually giving us this wonderful session.